and then start sharing screen. First, let's just do a quick review, okay, for what we discussed last week. Last week, we already started inheritance. Okay, inheritance. And when we discuss inheritance, what we mean is superclass and subclass. Is it? And if a subclass, how we identify subclass, a class is a subclass of a superclass, we have that keyword extends. Is it? Yeah, extends. Is it? And between superclass, subclass, we also learned the keyword protect. Is it protected? And we also learned the keyword override. Okay, so make sure to understand all of this. And for inheritance, is it? We discuss the override. And for the superclass, between the superclass and the subclass, what we can do is you can have superclass. You can declare a superclass variable, is it? But it can refer to what? To refer to an instance of a subclass. Is it a subclass? And then when you really call a method, is it like this variable, some method is it? And if this method also overridden in subclass, so the method will be which version? It will be the subclasses. Subclasses, is it? That's what we learned generally about inheritance, okay? General key concept. And then we also learned abstract class. Abstract class. And what's the major difference between abstract class versus concrete class? Is
you
what?
don't implement abstract?
Yeah, so abstract class must have what? Have at least one abstract method. Is it one abstract method? And what is an abstract method? Abstract is not implemented. Is it? And then the question, can you use the abstract class to create an instance? Can we use the abstract class to create an instance?
No.
No, very good. Yeah, so the answer is no, is it? That's the point. Then why do we use abstract class? Abstract class can be declared as what? Superclass. Is it? And then you can create a subclass and a concrete class. Is it? From abstract class, is it? And we also discussed polymorphism. Is it basically override, reflect the polymorphism, is it? And the dynamic binding. Dynamic binding, is it? Okay, so that's what we learned last week, just a general concept review. And then let's start with today's material. Today's material, I think it's in chapter 13. Okay, chapter 13. It's about another very, very important concept about interface. Interface. Okay, so how about let's do this question, okay, for our today's quiz. So today's quiz, and you send it to the chat, but only to me, okay, not public, okay, not to everyone. So make sure when you send the chat, just send to me. If you send to everyone, you are not going to be counted, okay? So today's first quiz question. First quiz question is what is the first new concept that we will learn today? And the answer is interface. So you just needed to type interface, okay? Send it to me, okay, in chat. Make sure only to me, okay, everyone.
Hey, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So on the Moodle, there is a quiz titled Inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
It opens on the 27th and closes on the 27th at the same time.
Okay, thank you for reminding. I need to make a correction. Okay.
Yep.
I need to make corrections. Yeah, for some reason, yeah, sometimes just to the starting they said I always got it wrong because there are multiple settings. When I do that, just skip viewing because it's all day. It's the inheritance quiz, is it?
Yeah.
Inheritance quiz.
And what do we need to look over before we take that quiz?
I believe it's just some concept.
Okay.
Yeah, just what I discussed probably. Okay, I don't remember exactly. That's a long time, but it's very, very easy. Okay. Everybody,
okay.
Send your quiz answer to the chat. Okay, very good. And then let's see. Okay, so today we will start to learn interface. Okay, so this is a different concept from class. Is it? And the class is what? It's like a blueprint. Blueprint, is it? And generally speaking, no matter it's concrete class or abstract class, is it? It generally has two parts, is it? Instance variable or variables, is it? And of course, it can also support a class variable or variables, is it? And what? Instance method. Is it? Or class methods. Is it? And that's a general thing that a class usually needed to have, is it? So we have attributes, is it? And behaviors. And generally for behavior, we call it what? An interface, is it? So the method, is it? Instance method, provide some interface to a client, is it? To operate on, is it? That's the class. So it's a blueprint, is it? And the instance variable describe what? Describe this specific category of objects. They all share those common attributes. Is it? That's what a class, generally speaking, have, is it? And what is an interface? is it? And interface, then it's different. Okay, so it's not a blueprint for some category of object, no. So what it does, because based on the word, interface, is it? And just think about when I said the class has two parts, is it? The attributes or fields, is it? And we also say, okay, behaviors, or we said interface, is it? So here we also say interface, is it? So we categorize like the method, is it, into interface because they provide some interface for client program, is it, to operate, is it? So that's the concept. And then you may be already able to guess why over here I said interface. For this new concept today, we learn interface. So basically what it is, so generally speaking, it's just to group a set of abstract methods together. Okay, so that's, so interface, the major feature is it contains a group of abstract methods. Okay, abstract, and later we will say it also support other types of method. But that's the major thing it cares about. It's about methods. Okay, it's not, so it doesn't care about the fields and attributes. Okay, that's the difference. Okay, that's a difference. Then you see, then it's interesting, is it? Because you just care about a method. Then the method, then you can think about it, is it? So it's do something, is it? Do something. Then just think about when we say, okay, move, is it? Then the move not limited to people, persons move, is it? So animal can move, is it? And the robot can move, is it? So it's not limited to a category of objects. What it try to describe, so suppose I said, okay, I want to group a set of methods together, okay, and to describe the moving action, is it? And then in this case, it's suppose we call it movable, is it? So it's to describe a group of actions regarding move, is it? As it how to move, then it's going to be depend on if the object is a person, or the object is a robot, or the object is an animal. This is a different type of objects. Is it? But regarding that verb, move, it's very abstract. Is it? It's very abstract. So this is the concept of interface. So it doesn't belong to certain category of objects. Okay. So this is general concept about interface. Okay, interface. So can you write the second quiz question? So second quiz question is for the interface. So the interface cares about what? Cares about attributes or cares about behaviors, or we can see cares about instance variable or cares about the method. So you can give the answer. It's interface cares about what? Cares about method. So can you send your quiz answer to our chat again? So you just need to answer, okay, it's regarding methods, okay, regarding methods. Okay, so that's the concept, is it? So next, let's take a look here. Our example, okay. So in this example, chapter 13, our third example, we define a Java file called payable.java, is it? So let's take a look what this Java file has. This Java file has a payable interface. Okay, so for interface definition, you have public, and so this is the visibility. It's not necessarily always be public, okay? But generally speaking, we put it as public. And then have the keyword interface and the name of the interface, in this case called payable, okay, payable. So in this payable interface, we have a method. This method, we call it get payment amount. If you take a close look of this method, it is just a what? A method signature. Is it? No implementation. And what we call this, basically, it's matches our abstract method definition. Is it? So basically, in this interface, this is equivalent to using public, abstract, and then return type and the method name. Okay, it's just the public and abstract. We skip it, we omit it. And but this, even though you didn't write public and abstract, it is still public. So the visibility is still public, okay? So for interface, okay? And it still has the keyword abstract, okay? So it's equivalent, but generally in interface definition, it's not mandatory that you need to write public and abstract, but by default, that means it's public and abstract if you don't write it, okay? So by default. So this is an abstract method you define. If we take a look here, is it here? This is integer k equals 1, okay? So basically what this equivalent to what? By default, if you don't define the accessibility, it's public, okay? And it also be static and final, okay? Static final, and the type and the variable. So basically, this is for a constant. For a constant, okay? So in interface, that's allowed, okay? You are allowed to define a constant variable that's related with this interface. That's allowed, but not instance variable, because interface will not be used to create instance, okay? Okay, so yeah,
so this
please.
variable is a constant variable?
Yeah, basically it's equivalent. So if you write, if you don't skip anything, it's still public, static, and final. Okay, because if it is final, is it, that means you cannot change. And plus static, that means it's a constant, is it? In
Thank
Java.
you. I didn't see the comment. Thank you.
Yeah. So the static and the final, okay, it's a static final. So basically it is a constant, okay, constant variable here. So we have abstract method. It allow constant variables as the values. And it also allow what? For interface. It also allows static method. Okay, so like over here, okay, but you don't need to worry about invoice. So here we have a method called get invoice. And the parameter anyway type, it's some reference object. Okay, and it returns some reference object. And what it does some mutation work. Is it inside this method? And it returns that object reference. Basically, you see it has a keyword status. So it is a static method. Is it? And it's equivalent to what you define as static and public. So it's just a public, we just skip it. Okay, if you don't put it by default, okay, then it is public. Okay. So, and for static method, then it's implemented. It's implemented. Be careful, okay? Only abstract method has the method signature. For static method, then it's implemented, okay? And there is another type of method that you can also use in interface definition. It's we call default method. Okay, default method. So it must have the keyword default, and then return type, and then method name. Okay, then you do something inside this default method. And if you take a close look, you will find in this default method, it access what? It can call, can invoke abstract method. Is this weird? This default method, it's, so what is a default? Default method, it's implemented. It is implemented, is it? So it's an implemented method, so that's why. So if a method you implement, that's called a default method. Okay, default method. Okay, and it also public accessibility. Okay, visibility is also public. Okay, and within it doesn't mean you got to call the abstract. So you can do a lot of things. Is it? One of the things is you can also invoke abstract method. That looks weird. Is it? How can you invoke? It's not implemented yet. Is it? You may be curious about this. So later on we will see. So there are a lot of information here. Okay.
So
So
what is the default?
Yeah, please.
Excuse me. So what is default? What does default means?
So this default just means this method is a default method. Okay, here. So it's a so we have a method type called default method, and it's available in interface. Okay, not in our class definition. In interface, it is allowed to have, so Java interface allowed to have default method. What is default method? Default method must be implemented. It must be implemented. If you leave the method body empty, then it's not a default method, it's an abstract method. Okay, so for a default method, you must implement it. Okay, later on we will see why we need a default method. Okay, it's majorly for updating. Okay, for the interface itself updating. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of issue. Okay, a lot of issue. So just remember, default in this case is a keyword, just like the static. Okay, it's a keyword. So then it's identify this method is a default method. Okay, generally speaking, we just say interface method. The majority of an interface method supposed to be what? Abstract method. Okay, method not implemented, just the method's signature, is it? But you interface also allow you to contain constant value, is it? Default method and static method. And regarding default method and static method, both are implemented inside the interface. Okay, so that's a concept. So our next quiz question is in interface. We discussed the 4 type of components that we can include in an interface. Is it? Regarding, so can you answer in the chat? So what's the major type of component that normally an interface contains? So the answer is abstract method. Okay, so you can send it to our chat. It's called abstract method. Okay, everybody answer this. Is there so any other questions regarding this interface definition? It's looks pretty similar, is it? As a, I don't know why that weird thing comes. Okay. So we already see the general idea about to define an interface. Is there any other questions regarding this? So far.
Could you guys see that?
Pardon me?
Could you guys see what I drew on the screen?
Yeah, why? How can you draw something on my screen?
I don't know. There's just a little arrow here on my phone and I can draw stuff.
Yeah, how can not? Yeah, so that's why I said I didn't do anything. Why? Oh, it comes from your. But I don't think I ever share a screen with you. That's weird.
Well, it's just like a little pin where I can make notes on like what you're doing.
On
Does
your
anybody
end.
else? Yeah.
And then for some reason it comes to this shared screen. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so try to avoid. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm just.
Yeah, try to avoid this. That's not good. Yeah. But good thing is all of you are our class students, because in some other professors' sessions, they said sometimes some random person just come to the Zoom room, then that's annoying. Okay. So anyway, let's take a look at the class. Okay. So let's first take a look at the invoice class, because I mentioned the invoice, is it? So let's see, what is invoice class? So the first Java file we discussed, payable, is it? The second one we will discuss is about invoice.java. Okay, invoice.java. So for the invoice.java, if you take a close look, the invoice is a class, is it? And if you take a close look at the ending part, it has a new keyword called implements. Is it? Implement. And the following that is what is the interface that we just defined. Is this, what is this? Okay, so that's how you use interface. How to use interface is you define some class. That class is going to implement this interface. Okay, so a class to implement interface. Okay, interface. So then you may ask, what does that mean? Is it? But anyway, just remember these keywords. For inheritance, is that we have the keyword extends. Okay, for interface, the keyword to use the interface, you need to do what? Implements. This is a keyword, remember, okay? Implements. Okay, so for invoice, nothing new here. It's just some instance variable. Then we have constructor, nothing new. We have set, we have get, nothing new. And then let's see. And get part, set part, set quantity, get quantity, set price. Get price is nothing new. And the to string, nothing new. We learned this. That's the only new thing here. And here, the get payment amount. Do you still remember where did we define this method? Because generally speaking, override is for what? So far, we have learned. Where can we use override so far?
In subclasses?
Yeah, in subclasses. But regarding this invoice, who is its superclass?
Interface payable.
Oh, no. Interface is not a class. Okay, who is it? Every Java class has a
Object?
root. Yeah, it's an object. But does the object has get a payment amount method? No, that object doesn't have that. So where does this override come from? Is it because what? Because invoice implements payable. Is it? And in payable, we define the get payment amount abstract class. That's how this comes from, is it? And in this class, this invoice, because it implements payable, is it? And here it implements the abstract method. Okay, so this override is for the payable interface. It has nothing to do with inheritance here, okay? So override can also be used for what? For interface, okay, interface. So you implement this get payment amount method, okay? Then this invoice class is what? It's a concrete class. A concrete class, okay. And so here, our last quiz question, okay, in this today's lecture is override can be used in what two scenario? So the answer one is for what? For inheritance, is it? The other is for between superclass and subclass, so it's used for subclass. The other is what? Is for a class who implements some interface, is it? So you need to write down those to the chat. So it's for subclass, and it's also for what? For interface, okay. So a class that implements interface. So just send your answer to our quiz.
My
Yeah,
internet
please.
just cut out. I don't know what you just said.
Oh, I just said override. As in so far we learned there are two scenarios we use override. The first scenario is the subclass override a superclass's method, is it? And this second scenario, so you just write, okay, case one is for subclass override superclass method. Second case is what? Is implement an interface abstract method. So implement an interface abstract method. Okay. So this is regarding our payable interfaces implementation in invoice class, is it? Then let's see for the employee class. And for the employee class, if you take a look, this employee class, this time it also implements payable. but this method itself is abstract class. So why it is this? Is it, so this employee class, it has the last name, first name, and the social security is nothing new as instance variable. And then it has employee constructor, is it nothing new? Set method, get method, set get method for last name, set and get method for social security, is it? And toString, is it toString method? That's all regarding this employee class, is it? Let's take a look. And if you take a look, do you think it's missing something? Because it implements payable interface. It is supposed to do what? As we said previously, if it implements an interface, if a class implements an interface, it's supposed to do what? Supposed to, assuming as that so far what we discussed is it also needed to implement the abstract method defined in payable. Is it? But it didn't. Is it? We didn't see overriding for the get payment amount. We only see the override for toString. The toString is from object class. So what's going on here? Is it missing something? That's also allowed. Okay. So if a class implements an interface, and if it doesn't implement the abstract method, of the interface, then the class is an abstract class. Okay, so the class itself is an abstract class. Okay, so basically it has that get payment amount method automatically defined for this class, but it's an abstract class. And if you create a subclass that implement this abstract class, you need to implement it. So let's take a look. The salary employee, is it extends employee? Is it pretty simple, just as weekly salary, okay? Then we scroll down. And it calls a superclass constructor first. Is it that has set and get method? Is it and toString? Nothing new here. But did you see here? So here, this get payment amount. Is it? It implements. Is it? That's because employee is an abstract class. Is it? And within that, it must have at least one abstract method. Is it? The abstract method is what? Is this get payment amount? Is it? And here we implement it. Implement it. Is it? That's why this salary employee class is a what? Concrete class. So it is not an abstract class anymore, okay? Because what? Because it implements the get payment amount method, okay? That's regarding this one. And then next let's see. Oh, we already discussed of the, so we discussed the interface, payable, the invoice, job, and the salaried and the employee, is it? So if you take a look here, Did you notice the difference so far? We have this. So far, what we discussed is that. So for subclass, it always extends the superclass. Is it? So it's still one category of class. Is it? But here, did you see this payable is applying to completely different type category of objects? Is it? Invoice and employee. This two has nothing to do with each other, generally speaking, is it? But you see, both implements. Is it both implement? Because what? Because both care what? Because both has that get payment amount. Interesting in this specific kind of what action? Is it always a user interface? As to for invoice, the get payment amount, interested in what? Interested in you calculate how much the customer ordered. Is it how much they need to pay? That's the invoice. Is it? For the employee, what we care about for the salary employee, based on how much that salary employee earned. Is it? So this demonstrates what? So even though the payable is an interface, it describes how to pay. Is it? But as to how the pay is going to be really implemented for different category of object, then it totally depends on that specific category of objects. Is it? So this also demonstrates in OOP the kind of concept we call it what? Polymorphism again. Is it? It's the same name. Is it? But for it can demonstrate different form, multiple form. Is it? Even though it only has that a single word, payable as a get payment amount, but for different category, they demonstrate different form, different action. Is it? So once again, this interface also shows the polymorphism. Okay. Okay, so that's the major information that we discussed today. I'm going